All right. Last but not least, we have Qais on deck for PowerApps Portals. He's going to take us to the end of this mile, and after today or after this session, there's another talk by the organizers and a SharePoint after that. So, Qais, take it away.
Thank you, Michael. And I'd like to welcome whoever's watching and listening to one of the last sessions of this fantastic event. I'd like to think that all the speakers in this time slot are the anchors that will bring this marathon home successfully, save the best for last, so to speak. A little chuckle there. Mark your calendars for next year, the Microsoft 365 Collaboration Conference, formerly the SharePoint Conference. Same location, different time in March, but in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand. It's a fantastic event. I'd like to extend a great big thank you to our sponsors. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our fantastic organizers and producers. This has just been a tremendous event. So finally, if you are interested, please submit for the raffle, visit vendor booths, sessions, and watch videos. Excuse me, I'm having an issue with my slide deck here. And submit your answers to the raffle to win one of 3 Oculus Quests. A pretty neat prize. All right. 10% of the funds from sponsors of this event are going to support community relief. If you want more information, please write to info@m365virtualmarathon.com and possibly consider donating yourself to United Way or International Medical Corps charities. Let me restart my show. My apologies. Okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Qais Gharib. I am 46 years old. I live in San Dimas San Dimas is in the Los Angeles area with my wife Amanda and my son James. I am a solutions manager / architect of the business applications team at Compass 365, a division of General Networks. My area of focus is the business applications development space in Office 365 and SharePoint on-prem, leveraging the Power Platform, Nintex, and Azure. What we're going to talk about today, PowerApps Portals. I like to refer to them as external Power Apps because they bring external users into the fold in a way that we haven't experienced before, more than just guest users, but actually authenticated users with their own identities. So PowerApps Portals allow for external access to all the wonderful tools within PowerApps, Power Automate, and Power BI. You can create internal / external collaboration on the same data, processes, and automations. You now have a digital feedback loop that engages customers, partners, or vendors, depending on your use case. For solutions you may want to develop for internal users, you can now include external roles. And portals complete the digitization of processes by allowing you to include external parties in your business processes. So a lot of folks have seen this slide from Microsoft. It's a very commonly used and seen slide. It demonstrates the digital feedback loop of getting customer data, creating processes on that data, and creating this feedback loop with employees and external users or customers. I feel, though, that the engaged customers part of this feedback loop has been limited in the Power Apps world because of the inability to truly engage with external users, and Power Apps Portals attempts to resolve that issue by bringing external users into the fold. All right, some things about Power Apps Portals. There are multiple authentication providers. You can leverage Microsoft accounts, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or other types of services like that to manage user identities. There are multiple identity protocols if you wanted to build your own profile management system. There are multiple methods of adding users via registration versus invitation, and we'll get into that concept in the demonstration today. There's profile management. All users in the system are part of a contacts list. So they are actual contacts. They are not Office 365 accounts or guest accounts. They don't need Office 365 licenses. They are records in a profile management system in the CDS database. And you can secure data using these contacts via custom relationships. So contacts can only see the data that relates to them. Users can update whichever values you allow them to update of their profile. So there's self-service profile management within the portal. If their accounts are managed in the portal, they can update their own passwords. If they're using Facebook, Twitter, or some other authentication provider, then they would manage their passwords through those services. Some integrations and some pro dev extensibility in PowerApps Portals. You can embed Power BI components like reports, dashboards, and tiles into your site. For SharePoint and Azure Blob Storage, you can use those services for document management. If your solution requires document upload, for instance, you can store documents in SharePoint. It's a much cheaper storage solution than CDS. Azure AD B2C can act as your identity provider to manage all authentication. This is basically Azure AD for your customers. And Azure Application Insights can be used to provide metric data on usage of your site. Some pro development tools. You can create Liquid template, or templates can be created using the Liquid framework. You can create reusable web templates that can be used across applications or multiple times within the same application. And you can create CDS server-side constructs like business rules, relationships, forms, and list views that are associated with the entities within CDS. And so any app that uses those entities or forms would inherit those rules and relationships that you've established on the server side. So what is true about Power Apps that is also true about Power Apps Portals? What do they have in common? Most use cases would have low to or no to low code solutions. You can quickly spin up apps for web and mobile usage. You could design sophisticated entity forms quickly by dragging and dropping fields and controls in a visual designer. Forms can span multiple columns, multiple steps, and collapsible sections. You have a rich, responsive client experience. Responsive UI automatically reflows across devices based on the space available. Some more about common between the two. You can easily reuse apps. You could easily reuse component across apps. So if you've built an entity with a specific form and you use it in a portal, you can reuse that in a model-driven app, in a separate app, or in another portal. Server-side logic is bound to the entity. You can create calculated and roll-up fields, and this, of course, carries across to the forms that are developed on those entities. You can create data level validation and field defaults. So when you're creating a field in a entity, you could assign it a preset list of values. You can create validation. If it's an email field or a phone number field, it can follow certain validation rules. And there's a single form development for CRUD operations, so to speak. So you have a single, what you see is what you get development environment for add, update, view, and delete operations that can be reused. So you can create a single form that can be implemented in multiple modes, whether it's insert, edit, view. Some Power Apps Portals features. You can create pixel perfect website design. You can adjust components on the page to the pixel You can use custom CSS to change positioning, how items are rendered, how controls are rendered, fonts, color schemes, things of that nature. You can use Bootstrap to create responsive sites. Another thing about portal apps is that the apps or that the portals are built on CDS as a data source. So there are connectors that allow you to import and export data from CDS. I know some folks have concerns about their data living in CDS. You can import and export data to and from CDS. As an example, we're currently building a portal solution for a customer that has external user data in Salesforce. We'll build Power Automate workflows that will synchronize Salesforce data into CDS. And it would also trigger invitations to new users as they are added to Salesforce. So a new user will be introduced to the system in Salesforce. A Power Automate workflow can watch for these new users and create their records in CDS and initiate an invitation. So there are integration points in and out of CDS. Another great feature is you can use a custom domain name. So if you have a name picked out, it doesn't have to follow the portal apps URL that comes with your site. You can overlay that with your custom domain. Some use cases that are common for PowerApps Portals: vendor supplier management. If you have external vendors, you could design a PowerApps portal that allows you to build processes with your vendors in mind. This portal can include processes that send out approved purchase orders to particular vendors. That vendor can accept the purchase order and then report back fulfillment information, like when items were sent, quantity of items sent. And as that is being entered by both internal and external users, as you have this collaboration going back and forth, workflows are running that send out notifications to interested parties, like the vendor has shipped this amount of items, or when you're receiving, you can look up what the vendor said was sent, and you can verify, and so on and so forth. Another use case: government agency or government entity with sub-agencies. A portal can be designed to send out reminders to sub-agencies to provide data for government-mandated reports. The external agencies can then enter that data in a portal, see pending action items, and uploading supporting documentation. The third use case that I'll discuss here is the legal portal, and this is what I'm going to demonstrate: a legal case management portal. So law firms can create portals to interact with customers. Clients can be onboarded internally with their name, email address, and other important information that can trigger an invitation to the client to register in the portal. When attorneys produce documents for client review, they can upload the documents, flag them for the associated case, and a workflow will be triggered to notify the client. The client can then log into the portal to view their available documents or to provide information requested by the attorneys. Okay, that takes us into our demo. So typically you would come to the make.powerapps.com homepage to create a portal from blank. That takes several minutes, so I went ahead and started the process. I've already created a portal called Case Management Portal, and we can see the development environment for that portal here. This is out of the box what you would normally get in a PowerApps portal. To modify settings of this portal, there's a couple of ways you could go about doing that. You can go to settings for the portal and click on the settings link, site settings, or you can go to portal management, which will open up the same tab, the settings for portal management. Okay, so looking at the development environment for a new portal, I just wanted to explain some of the components that you'll see in this development environment. On the left-hand side, left-hand navigation, you'll see four major pages or four major areas. The first is pages that are contained in your portal. And out of the box for a blank portal, you'll get the home screen, a sub page called services and another subpage to home called, or rather, these are siblings to home. Product A and product B are child pages to services. So this is where you can control what pages are created, where they exist in the navigation in terms of order, and you can hide items that you don't want to show in the navigation, or promote items or make them sub pages to other pages. Next, you have components. These are the items that you would drop onto a page, like sections. You have 1, 2, and 3 column sections, and then there are components like text, forms, lists, things of that nature, Power BI, embedded reports. You can drop these onto a page. You have themes. Out of the box, you'll get theme.css and bootstrap.min.css. You can always add your own CSS. You can also create inline CSS. I'll show you in a minute how to modify the HTML. You can create inline CSS there. But if you upload your custom CSS, it will take precedence over the existing CSS for items that are duplicated. And these are the templates I referred to earlier. We're not going to get into templates for this demonstration. There's just not enough time. But here are the existing templates, and I'll show you in site settings where you can modify those templates or add new ones. Okay. So, one other thing before I get to the other areas of this page. When you create a new page from this new page launch menu, it gets created as a sibling to the home page. So a new page that we create from there would be a sibling here. If you want to create children to any of the parent nodes, you would create them from that node. You would add a child. Okay. And in the development environment, if you select a component, so this is basically an HTML page, you have components that you can select, and as you select components with this page, like this section, the appropriate properties pane, this properties pane will show the appropriate properties for that component that you've selected. So you'll notice a section has an alignment and a background, which could be a filler, an image, whereas a text control will have just a font color and alignment. The properties adjust based on what's selected. Okay, so let's add just for a quick demonstration, this is going to be pretty simple. We're going to say M365 virtual marathon link, and I spelled that incorrectly. All right, and I'm going to change that font color to something that's more easily viewable. And let's say I want to change the background on this section. I don't like the plain white. I'm going to change it to salmon. And one other note, so this section has a background image. It has a hero image. You can either select a different image that's already been uploaded, or you can upload a new image. We'll open up a file dialog box. But these images and the CSS files are all stored in the site settings, which I'll show you in a moment, as web files. So you can add and you can manage the web files. This is the if you go to web files, you'll see all files that have been uploaded, either CSS or image files. So if we go back, if we wanted, we could change the hero image. I'm not going to do that right now. Yeah, so we made some changes. We can browse the site. And now we'll launch a new tab to show us how the site renders. And you'll notice this text was added, the background was added here. If we want to make this a link, we can modify the HTML. We click the source code editor icon here. We find the text that we want to modify. going to add an anchor tag. All right, save it. And now when we browse the site, we can just go to the site and refresh it. That button has the same effect. This is now a link, which will launch the Microsoft 365. So it's pretty easy to manage the HTML, to add your own HTML, to do inline CSS that way, or upload your own CSS that manages the look and feel of the site. Before we leave the development environment, I wanted to actually, no, I'm going to do some page management. We're going to add and remove some pages. But one other thing I wanted to talk about, changes you make in the site settings, like creating new forms or lists, don't automatically synchronize to your site. What you have to do is click this sync configuration button, and we'll do that as we go back and forth between site settings and the site development environment. We'll have to click sync configuration for those changes to take effect. So as I said previously, I'm creating a case management portal. So I am going to make some changes. We're going to delete services. And we're going to delete product A and product B. We are a services organization. We're not selling any products. Oops. And then I'm going to create a new page. We'll call this administration. That's the page title. And then the URL is, the partial URL is the page URL that will show up. Okay, and the template I'm going to keep as page with child links. And then under administration, I want to add a few more pages and add a child page called cases. And I want this, let me change the URL first. You have to wait for things to take effect. Sometimes they don't. All right, and this is going to be a page with a title. And when you create children or child pages, it's going to inherit the template of the parent. So now that I change this to page with title, if I create a sub page to cases or a child page, and I'm going to call this add case. You notice that the template is page with title. We're going to go back and add a subpage to administration, and this is going to be called clients. And just to give you an idea of what I'm doing, this is a legal case management portal. And what I want to do is create a repository or a place where we can store case information and associated client information. But I'm also going to use this client information to send out invitations to users to register and authenticate to this site. The purpose of these pages that I'm creating is for the cases page, it's going to have a list of cases, and then you could launch functions like creating a new case from that page, and that will launch the add case page. So the cases page is going to get a list, whereas the add case page will get a form. The clients page will also, that one's done. The clients page will also get a list of clients, and from there you can create a new client, and that will take you to the add client page, which I'm creating now. Okay, so in creating our case management portal, we want an automated process of adding clients and associating them with a case. Most importantly, we want to automate the process of invitation. We don't want that to be manual, where you have to create a user and then send an invite and then track their status. So when a user is added to the system, an email will be automatically sent out with a link that takes them back to the portal to register. That link should contain a unique invitation code that they must redeem, and that invitation code should expire at some point. It shouldn't live on in perpetuity. One of the steps to accomplish this is to turn off open registration. We don't want just anyone to be able to create an account. We want to control who creates accounts. So the only users that should be able to create accounts are the ones we are aware of. Okay, so let's go to browse site. It's going to refresh this page. You'll notice that here are the links. We just created this administration and child pages. When you go to sign in, you're also able to register. And one of the options for registering is just an open registration, which I want to show you. So this tab for register, you can enter your email, create a username, password, and register. We don't want that. We want to control who gains access to the system. So we're going to go into site settings, and we're going to look for a property called open registration enabled, and we're going to change that to false. Okay. If we go back to the site and we refresh, it's still going to show the register tab because we have not synced these changes. So we have to go back to our portal development area, sync the changes, sync configuration, and when we come back, you'll see that the register tab is no longer available. All they could do is redeem an invitation. So we want to give them an automated way of coming here to redeem that invitation. Okay. To start, so in order to create an automated invitation process, we need to create some infrastructure for it in the way of data structure, views, and forms. So to start, we're going to create a new entity, which is a table in CDS, and we're going to modify an existing entity. So when you open the list of entities in CDS, you will see that there are entities that were automatically provisioned. We did not create these. And the way you get to your entities is from the make.powerapps.com homepage. You'll see a data section in your left-hand navigation. You expand it and you'll see entities. And from here, you'll see a set of automatically provisioned entities. We're going to modify this contact one because that's going to be our placeholder, or rather our storage unit for users, but we're going to create a new entity for cases. So we're going to click new entity, call it case, and create it. Now, in our portal, Michael, can you hear me? I think I lost connection for a moment.
I can, you're showing me now. You want to move that window out of the way. There you go. Don't even see me.
All right. All right, so where we left off was creating the case entity. Here we go. So case was provisioned. There's a lot of out-of-the-box fields that are created. We don't need to worry about them right now. I want to create a case detailed form. So I'm going to go to Forms. I'm going to add a main form, and it opens up a new development environment. This is CDS. We're going to create an entity form for this entity we just created. It creates a basic one. When you open it, the name field is the case name, so we'll use that field. We don't want to show the owner field, so we're going to hide that. And then I think that's good for a new case, and we're going to publish that. So we've created a case. I didn't give it a name. Let me go back and change that. We're going to call this case detail and republish. All right, when you close out that tab and you say you're done, you'll see that the form exists. Now we're going to modify the contact entity. The contact entity is a default entity, as I said, automatically provisioned in CDS. Any authenticated user in the portal must have a contact record. Logged in users are always contacts. So we will use this entity to create users and subsequently invitations for those users. So we go back to entities, we find the contact entity, and there are two changes I want to make. Number one, I want to add a lookup field to the case. In our demo, it's going to be a one-to-one relationship between user and case. And the data type is going to be lookup, and the related entity is case. And this is a required field. And we're done. And then we need to modify the email field, because the email field is critical in workflows we're going to build later in this demo. So right now it's optional. I need it to be required. So I'm going to change that to required. Say done. I'm going to save the changes to my entity. You'll notice once that's done and we go to relationships, a new relationship has been established between the two entities. So like in a SQL Server database, when you create a relationship between two tables, you'll see the case relationship one right here. Okay. Now we want to create a form for client detail, the way we did for case detail. And we're going to select the main form. There's going to be a lot more items in this default form because the contact entity has so many more fields. There's actually a tabbed user interface. We don't need any of the items in the details tab for the sake of this demo, so I'm going to delete it to simplify things. In the summary tab, I'm going to hide a couple of these sections. And I'm going to hide some fields that we're not going to be using. And you'll notice the email field is now required, which is what we wanted. So anytime this form is used in an application, it will adhere to these business rules that we've created. All right, and the last thing we want to do is we want to add the case field. And that's fine where I put it. And I'm going to hide this last section. Okay, so this is my form. Of course, I didn't give it a name. It is this is client detail. And we're going to publish. So I'm going to create a view on the contacts list, a custom view that shows the fields that I wanted to show. I didn't do that for the case entity because I'm okay with the view, the active case view, which is just name and created on. I could even remove created on. I prefer not to modify existing views or forms. I create new ones, so you always have the original to go back to. So in the case of the contact list, I'm going to create, and so I use the term contact and client interchangeably here. On the user side, it will show as client, but in the data side, the entity is called contact. So I need a custom view because I don't like the views or they don't show the information that I want. So I'm going to create a view and I'm going to call it clients, and the description is active clients. And in this view, I definitely want the full name of the contact. I also want to add, there's a couple of ways you can add fields. You can add them from here, or you can search for it here and add it. And you'll see that I built a view. I want to add a filter. I only want records where status is equal to active. And I say okay. And I publish. So now that we've made our changes to the data layer, we need to build out the lists and forms that we will drop into the actual web pages we created previously. So we're going to go to app settings or site settings, I should say, and we're going to go to entity forms. So we have a detail form, but we don't have actual direction in terms of what mode it should be, whether it's an add, edit, view. So that's what we're going to create here, these entity forms, which dictate how the form is to be used, what happens after the form is submitted, things of that nature. So first, we're going to create an add case form. And I'm going to try to hurry up. I know we're short on time. And this is an insert. And let me fix something really quick. By default, the portal gets named Starter Portal. So I want to rename that. I should have done that before, but I missed that. Actually, I just want to call it Case Management Portal. And we'll save and close. Save and close is not saving and closing. The change took effect. We go back to entity forms. We're going to create the add case and select case detail, the form we just created, the entity form. The general tab is the only one that form had. It's an insert. The website is Case Management Portal, and we want to enable entity permissions, and I'll explain that later. We're going to save. I'm going to explain why we check that. Once I save, you get new options or new functionality here in this module. We want to go to the on success settings. And we don't want to, because this is a new page that the user is going to be taken to add a case, we don't want to just display a success message because they'll just sit on that page with nowhere to go. We want to redirect them back to the page that has the list of all the cases once they've added a new one. So we're going to redirect them to cases was the name of the page. There we go. And that's it. Save and close. We're going to do the same thing for client. For case, I'm just going to create an add a case function here. I'm not going to do the view and edit to save time. I'll do that for the client entity. So we're going to call this add client. And the entity is called contact that we're building this off of. And the form is called client detail. And it was the summary tab. It's an insert. The website is case management portal. When we save, then we could change the other settings. We want to redirect here as well because it's the same thing. We're going to be opening in a new page. We want to redirect them back to the client's page. And we're going to save and close. Now we want to add edit and view forms for the client entity. So the difference is the mode, instead of insert, it's now edit. It's the same form, but in a different mode. And we're going to use a query string because this is going to open up a modal form in the website. So we pass the identifier through the query string. We assign it to this portal. And I believe we're done. Yeah, save and close. Now we're going to do the same for view client. All right. Now we need to create those list views. So we're going to create entity lists. We're going to create one for case. And we're going to select what view we're going to show. As I said before, the active case is one that was already available. It's fine with me. We're going to use that one. And once we save it, if you go into options, you'll notice we don't have, or actually we do have options, but we need to save it to get the full options. We'll go back to options, and on the list level, there is a create action. So from the list, you could create a new item, but on the item level, for each item, you can implement a details view, an edit view, or a delete action. You could even launch workflows, do other types of automations from here. But we're just going to focus on create for the case. We're going to create, and we're not going to select an entity form. We're going to go to a web page, and that web page is the add case web page that we created, and we're going to drop that form that we've created, the add case form. So the web page is called add case, and the button we're going to give it the label of add case, and that's it. We're not doing any other actions on this list, and you'll see the differences between this list and the client's list, and what these settings, how these settings differ, what the ramifications are. So we're going to do clients. And we're going to select the view that I created called clients. We're going to save it. We're going to go to options. We do want a create new client functionality. It's also going to be redirected to a web page. The web page is called add client, and the button we want to have the label of add client. Now here we're going to implement details, and the details is an entity form, and the entity form is view client, and the button label will be view client details. Same thing with edit. And delete. And that only has a button label because there's no form. All right. So if we go back to page management, where is our page? Here we go. And we go to the cases page. We're going to drop, once that loads, we're going to drop the cases list in here. going to try to speed through this. I know we're limited on time. We're going to say existing for the list, and we don't see the list. Why? Because we created items in the settings module, the site settings module. So when we come here, we need to sync configuration. So it's aware of all the new components we just built. So let's go back to cases. Existing, and I want our case list, and you'll see already implemented is the create new record. You see the button for add case. There's no data currently. This other functionality is not implemented because we didn't set the properties for this functionality when we created the list component. All right. By the way, in the portal designer, changes are automatically saved. It's pretty consistent. I've seen some funny things happen, but it is pretty consistent. All right, now we want to go to the add case. So what happens when a user clicks this add case? They're going to be taken to this add case web page. And here we're going to drop in a form, and it's also existing, and it's the add case form, and it's insert, and you'll see our form success settings. It'll be redirected to the cases page. Everything that we already dictated, we already set these business rules, and when we drop them in on pages, it already inherits those rules. So we're going to go to clients. And we're going to drop the clients list. And you'll see insert or create, view, edit, and delete are all implemented. And you'll see the add client shows up here in the viewer because it's a single button that's always going to be there on the list. This other functionality is row level. It will only appear for each if a record exists. So the next thing we're going to do is go to the add client page, and we're going to drop in the add client form. And again, the success will redirect you back to clients. So let's go add some data. We're going to browse website. And we're going to get a permissions error. So what happened here? Why are we getting this error? The reason is I am an anonymous user trying to access data, entity data. Since we set the enable entity permissions to true on the lists and forms, we need to explicitly assign permissions to the web role of the current user. The current user is anonymous. It's in the anonymous web role. You cannot assign entity permissions to the anonymous web role. So we have to, we need to implement entity permissions and set up user creation. So essentially what I'm saying is we need to dictate what level of permissions the different roles have on these entities, and then we need to implement an actual account because you need to authenticate. You can't be anonymous. So we're going to tackle both of those things. We go back to site settings, and we go to the web access control rule page. And what I'm going to do here is restrict that administration page to only authenticated users. So I'm going to call this administration. And the website is case management, and the web page is the administration page. And we want to restrict read, meaning we want to prevent people from accessing this. So when we save it and we go to web roles, we're going to add existing web roles. And since it's administration, we only want administrators to access this. So only authenticated users who are in the administrator's web role can access these pages. The best practice is to do it for all the subpages, but we're not going to do that here in the demo. So for the cases page, the clients page, you would also restrict access. Okay. So if I go back and I sync configuration, I want to show you that that page is now not visible, the whole administration section. So if a user lands on the home page, they will not see administration anymore because I just restricted it for anonymous users. Okay, so next we want to set entity permissions. So we're going to go back into the site settings. We go to entity permissions, and here's where we dictate what level of access each role has on each permission. So the first one I'm going to do is called Qais. The entity name is Qais. The website is Case Management. For simplicity, I'm going to make it global. I'm going to give the users that I grant this permission rule, I'm going to give them all levels of access. I need to save it, and then the web roles allows us to add, okay, what roles can have this level of permissions? And I want it to be administrators. Add that. Save and close, and we're going to do the same for the client entity, which is actually contact. Okay, now we need an actual account who's an administrator. We need to, this is a chicken before the egg situation. We need to manually create an account that has that functionality. So we're going to go into contacts. I'm going to create a new contact, and it's just going to be me. And I'm going to save it. And I go to web roles, and I'm going to manually add me to the administrators group, and do that by going to contacts, add existing contact, select myself. So now I'm in this administrators group, but I'm just a contact. I haven't actually registered to the site yet. So that is the next step. I need to go back to contacts, and I need to create an invitation for me. I need to save it. And if I go to invitations, I'll see my invitation code. So I'm going to manually set up this account to start things out. And where is my code? Here it is. So if I go back to this portal and I go to sign in, when I enter this redemption code, it knows who I am because I'm a contact and it has my email address, and I can create a username and a password. And I register.
I think you have 2 minutes left for folks, and then they got to get moving.
Okay, so the remainder of this, I'll cut it short. The remainder of this, you can manage your own profile. You can change your user ID and password. Administration is now available. You'll have access to cases. I'm not going to show you the automated portion of the invitation, but I'll show you. You can add a case, new case. And when you submit it, it saves it. It goes back to the cases list, and you'll see it. Or we could go to clients. And when you add a client, I can call this person Bob Smith. And Bob will have an email, bob@smith.com. And you can select an existing case for Bob. When you submit it, it will go back to the clients list. And you'll remember that there was item level functionality that we built out. You can, there's something wrong with my edit form, but you should see a view client details, modify client details, or delete client. It'll open up a modal screen with that information. The last part of this that wasn't able to get to is the automation. When you add somebody to this list, there's a really simple Power Automate workflow that whenever a record is created here, it creates an invitation. It gets the invitation code. It emails a link to the user's email address. They click the link. It will bring them back to that redeem invitation with the invitation code filled out, and they sign in, they see all their own data. That was the last part of this. So I will end it here and ask if anyone has any questions.
So far, no questions as of yet, guys. But that was very cool.
Thank you. Thank you. I might create an addendum to this for that workflow. It's like 5 to 10 minutes. So
yeah, 50 minutes is a little tough, but we need to make sure that folks get to the finish line session. So
yeah, I think
one
of the last things. Yeah, if I could just wrap up, one of the things I wanted to show is the demonstration was really about 30 to 40 minutes. Let's say there was 10, 15 minutes for the deck. In about 45 minutes, you spun up a portal with some entities and forms and automation. If I had 10 more minutes, it's pretty powerful, where you can create now this collaboration between external users and internal users, and you could create internal apps that leverage this data and workflows, and you create that powerful automation. If I could just finish the last couple of slides.
Folks got to get to that other finish line session. So
okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.